All right, to quote Dave Chappelle, it's a celebration, bitches. What's going on, guys? Happy New Year 2025, our Season 7 kickoff. Oh, my God. First off, I can't believe that we're actually halfway through the decade. I can't believe this is the start of our 7th season of podcasting. Can't believe I've been doing that this long. And for the kickoff episode this year, we always try to do like these big special panel episodes in order to try and kick off the new year. And I couldn't have thought of a better panel of people to have it with. Luke, my Talking Lost co-host, Kristen, Miss Filmingo, and of course the return of the math teacher movies himself, Mr. Give Denzel a BAFTA, Sean of Math Teacher Movies. Good to have you back, man.
Maybe this year. Come on.
Maybe. It could happen. It could happen, although I'm not seeing such positive reaction to Gladiator 2.
It's definitely not happening, but it could happen.
Listen, according to him, he's only got a few movies left in him. So, oh man, guys, we are halfway through the 2020s. Somehow, we've survived the first 5 years. Let's hope the next 5 years are better than the first. But with that being said, that means that it is time. We're saving our top 10 movies and TV shows for the end of January. Next week, we'll be doing a worst of list because, yes, last year was just bad enough to justify doing a worst of year list. But we are doing, that's right, people, a halfway through the decades. We have all been working very hard going through our lists of the last 5 years. I know I've assembled my 10. It took me a while to do it. I know you guys have. So let's get this started. This is Season 7 of the Talking TV podcast. Let's do this. Oh, man. I'm sorry. I'm still like kind of just processing the fact that we're actually here, that we're actually in the year 2025, because I didn't think that 2024 was a year that we were actually going to ever be done with after a certain point. I don't know about you guys. It was not a great year for me personally. But I'm thankful for all of you for obviously, the positive role that you all have had in my life over the last couple of years. For you guys are the ones that constantly keep showing up over and over and over again because we all love doing this so much. I want to do a quick roundtable thought panel discussion before we get started. Sean, I'm going to start with you since we haven't had you on in a little bit. What are our thoughts on the 2020 so far when it comes to movies, TV? Everybody has been going on doomsaying, being like, oh, this is the end of cinema after COVID, after the strikes that were going on. But what's your thoughts so far on the last 5 years of movies and kind of what we've seen in the shifting cinematic landscape?
Well, obviously, the unspoken problem that, everyone's going to mention is that this entire decade started with the pandemic. So it started with the literal evisceration of movie theaters, which, by the way, were in trouble back in 2019 and 2018. They were closing down then. Streaming was the peak streaming for Netflix was 2019, where several movies were nominated for Best Picture, and deservedly so. And so I was racking my brain going through the list, and there's definitely a lot more, and it felt like I had recency bias, but there was definitely a lot more coming from the top of the list on there. So more movies from 2024 and 2023. So I had to kind of sort that out to try to spread it out. I'd say it's rebounding slightly because then you look at a writer's strike that I'm looking at the movies coming out in January, which obviously is never great, but it does feel like there's a little bit of a yikes happening in new movies coming out, even though this is 2 years after the strike. So far, I'd say survival, a lot more interest in more very deeply independent films, and a lot more interest in international, which is so damn important. And so I think that with a lagging in the American movie system, there has been that international push, which I think a few of mine are international on here. So actually, now that I look at it, quite a few of them. So that'll be interesting. So that is definitely part of it, I think.
100%. Could not agree more. In fact, the international bid we're going to come back to as well, because you're very, very spot on there as far as really international movies taking a bigger presence, I would say now than possibly ever in my lifetime. Let's call it. Kristen, your thoughts on the 2020 so far?
Well, Sean just hit it right on the nose. Basically, we had a rough time with the pandemic, and a lot of movies were pushed back, put on hold, and it was tough to find a decent movie in 2020 where you could actually, when theaters did open back up, it was hard to go find a film to go and support But film independent really strived, I think, in 2020. And then, like what Sean was saying, independent film has like garnered a lot of audiences' attention now. And then, yes, with the strike, yes, with everything, especially now, even with how everybody's facing like a financial crisis and trying to figure out what they want to spend their time and hard-earned money for when it comes to film. People want to be satisfied about what they're watching and not pay for like a low tier like Dennis Quaid film or something that's like, like awful, like another Crow or something. People want to see cinema and pay a good price for it. I mean, look at the resurgence, how we saw Barbenheimer. I mean, there is filmmaking is making an improvement, but there's also a fact where you want to go to the theater and have like an experience. So I think that's also a thing. So it's been an interesting so far decade of like film and theaters and just how Hollywood is struggling to find its voice still.
Yes.
Now in this modern age, you can say.
Yes, exactly. One of the biggest things I noticed is how Hollywood is struggling to kind of redefine itself, not only in the wake of the pandemic and the strikes, but also in the wake of kind of the end of the MCU, thinking that they can kind of, go back to the well and rely on some of the old hits. And well, those hits have not been delivering as we've seen over the last couple of years. Luke, your thoughts so far on the 2020s?
Yeah, just to continue the slight MCU mention, there's been a sort of changing of the guard in the cinema landscape. MCU is not quite the juggernaut it used to be with the consistent hits. Yes, Deadpool and Wolverine made $1 billion this year, but before that, they haven't been as consistent. The superhero genre as a whole, there's been a lot of discussion about that. But I mainly want to reiterate on Kristen's point about the cinematic experience, because there was that whole fiasco in 2021 where Warner Brothers dumped all their movies on HBO Max, and no one liked that. That really pissed off Nolan, including. So he's now making The Odyssey at Universal, which is quite a turn of events. But then you had a movie like Avatar: The Way of Water. Everyone thought, oh, this Avatar has no cultural significance, and it made like $2 billion because people want that big experience, even if it is just a tech demo. Will it happen again this year? I certainly hope so. And again, the Barbenheimer thing, people want to go to the theaters for those big experiences, and that trickles down to the smaller movies, hopefully. And people are starting to realize that, the sucky movies are not worth going to. Like Craven just a few weeks ago made like $2. So I hope that people are starting to realize what they like, and hopefully the studios can also learn the right lessons, not the wrong lessons, as Hollywood often does.
As Hollywood often does, indeed. Yes, exactly. So my kind of whole look at it, like I said, all of you bring up extremely, extremely valid points as well. I think it's a combination of, obviously, yes, the pandemic got people used to that whole watching stuff at home mentality, and not really, obviously not wanting to leave their house, and not really justifying the need to leave the house and go to the theaters and spend godly amounts of money. And so Hollywood has kind of been in this kind of rigmarole in order to try and figure out, okay, how do we get people back to the theater? And that kind of felt like that was just a struggle. And for, like you were saying, Luke, you had the whole day and date drop that HBO Max tried, and I would say failed. Like I said, a lot of people did not like that, and overall financially did not do well, because I think of that entire slate, only like 3 movies that whole year for Warner Brothers were financially successful. And like you said, so you've seen this shift towards, I feel like, making everything feel bigger, bigger feeling movies, bigger feeling advertisement, movies like Top Gun, Oppenheimer, these movies, Avatar, these movies that feel bigger, larger than life. Like, you have to see this in a theater. And as well as the bad movies, you're right, because it felt like there was always this instance of, when we were kind of coming up through the YouTube era of like, okay, you're going to have your good movies, you're going to have your bad movies, but you're going to kind of enjoy them regardless. Now that's not really the case, because now it feels like the bad movies are almost made for the memes, and kind of the lack of self-awareness and kind of exposure that the studios have in terms of their kind of, them not really respecting their audiences, I would say. I really feel like that's the biggest thing that has kind of been shown to the forefront. And while, once again, it has caused a lot of their efforts to flail, the efforts that have been successful have been successful. really, I think we're still kind of in a phase of figuring out like kind of what the landscape is going to be. But now that it's been enough time, and now that it's been enough time, and now that they are kind of figuring out like they're still trying to figure out what is working and what isn't. But I think overall, it's safe to say that there's been enough hits now that they'll be enough enjoyable. Like, looking forward to the slate for 2025, there's enough here where I'm not going to say it's like a regular movie year, because we're never going to have a regular movie year like pre the pandemic ever again. But, like, there's enough ones that, like, feel like they're kind of fulfilling what it is that people actually want to be watching. You know, you've got the Formula One movie with Brad Pitt, the 8th Mission Impossible that's coming out, Avatar, the big one, obviously, you know, 3 Marvel movies that all look to be kind of a little bit like the Marvel of old, while also trying to test out and go into bold new directions, if you will. The biggest thing, obviously, that everyone's looking forward to, that everyone went nuts for, was Superman, which Luke and I talked about, you know, the fact that it kind of is bringing in this new wave, potentially, of, okay, we're not trying to be these, you know, constantly joke a minute, very expectation-shattering movies. We're trying to kind of get back to the feeling of old, of getting to, you know, filling people with some hope after the darkness of the last couple of years. The other thing, which, again, I want to go off Sean's point, is that kind of in the wake and lack of American cinema, you saw this massive surge of foreign cinema. Some truly, truly incredible movies. You know, movies like RRR, like Godzilla -1. You know, you had Luke, obviously, you know, Latvia came to play this year with Flow, obviously, which is surefire getting Best Animated Feature nomination right there. So, kind of all of that is to say is that we had some dark years, we had some rough years, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And without further ado, let's get to these lists, all right? So, what's it called? Before we get to it, I'm just going to do a round table, see if anybody has any honorable mentions. Sean, you got any honorable mentions?
I mean, well, I started my list at about 90-something, and then I just got, like, really, like, potentially quite drunk and just started, like, taking out names as I went, just went. Because there's no other way to do this one except by going by pure, raw emotion, you know, right drunk, edit sober from Ernest Hemingway, which is someone you should always follow the advice of because he turned out great. And I deleted all my honorable mentions that I had, but one of the few is I didn't put a lot of my favorite films of the year on here, and it might have been just because for like small p political reasons, where I didn't really want to like I don't know, like I had Mass on there as my favorite film of 2022, but I don't think that's gonna like hit the top 10 of the first decade, although I love that movie so much that year. I had Everything Ever All at Once on there, which, you know, for this moment where it like won this best picture from an absolutely insane point, and it was just strange that could even happen. And so I had that on there. And just thinking of some of the other ones I took off, but those were the main two right there.
Got it. All right. Kristen, any honorable mentions you want to hit before we get started?
I just have a couple, like one that playing off of what Sean was saying, I had films that were in my top 3, top 2 of like that year as well. Like one of them was Mitchell's versus the Machines. I absolutely love that film because I love Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. I loved Flow. I absolutely adore Flow. It's like one of my favorite films of like probably my favorite animated films like all time. If I could put it in a top 10, if we're talking animated film, I love a lot of great stuff. And then I like mostly looked at my number ones. I did put those number ones on my list, but then I ranked some of them higher than others. But honestly, I don't think it has been that bad of a decade so far. And also I do want to acknowledge Mass. Mass is also a great movie. So, but I don't think defines the
really tough
decade that we're in, but it is a good pick. It is a good pick, though. Yeah. So this was kind of tough. I will say that.
All right, and Luke, any honorable mentions?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a Letterboxd list nerd, so I just had to open one list and it was already there. So I just made a few adjustments, just how I was feeling yesterday. So just a few honorable mentions. I watch a lot less movies than you guys, so let's just keep that one in mind. So just a few mentions. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was a massive surprise. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Another Round from Denmark. There's
hell yeah,
one of 2 foreign movies on my list. Twisters. Shout out to Twisters.
Hell yeah,
the best 5
of the year.
The best 5-star, 3-star movie. I'm never gonna forget that line for the review.
and then it was between two of these, and I put Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Ooh, honorable mention.
top 10.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So I'm just going to kind of run through some of my other because basically I'll break it down. The way that I did my list is I put my number one from each of these 5 years, and then the rest I was kind of like picking and choosing. I felt like kind of what best represented the decade and also my personal enjoyments. But so for some honorable mentions, so 2020, Promise a Young Woman, Mank, King of Staten Island, To Five Bloods, Trial of the Chicago 7, and Tenet. I will not hear anything against that movie. That movie is incredible. 2021, The First Dune did not make my list. It is an honorable mention. Coda, Judas and the Black Messiah, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Mitchell's versus the Machines. 2022, Babylon, The Menu, Tar, On the Count of Three, and Bullet Train. Also really, really enjoyed that. Also Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. 2023, this probably is the one that had the most amount of contributions to my list, but honorable mentions include The Holdovers, May December, Poor Things, The Zone of Interest, Fair Play, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3, Boy and the Heron, American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Theater Camp. And, of course, my favorite Ari Aster movie yet, Beau is Afraid. And at the risk of spoiling some instances from my 2024 top 10 best movies list, I'm going to just throw on some other ones as well that I thought were fun. The rest will be obviously on the list in a couple of weeks when those come out. The Fall Guy, had a blast with. Trap, criminally underrated. Hundreds of Beavers. Did not see this movie coming in a million years. Fucking hilarious. And A Different Man as well. One of the absolute most unexpected surprises that I've seen so far of this year. Sebastian Stan is batting 100 right now after this year. So how this is going to work? This is going to work just in order to save on time. Pretty much like we usually do lists. We're going to go around round table panel. We're going to start with 10 through 6. Once we've all hit that, then we're going to do 5 through 2, and then we're going to do our number ones. All right, Sean, kick us off. What's your number 10?
Do we do 10 and then a round, or I do 10, 9, 8, 7,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
All right. So my 10 is, it was mentioned here already in the honorable mentions, Judas and the Black Messiah. I think that this movie was criminally underrated. I really love this one. This one was also mentioned, Another Round. I just think it was actually spectacular in every way. And the fascinating relationship of these people with alcohol was something everyone was thinking about in the pandemic. So I thought that was an interesting one. Past Lives. One that I really didn't expect and was my number one for a full week until I saw Oppenheimer, which is a real shame. It was like such a
only a week.
I mean, I was just like, wow, Past Lives is definitely the best film of the year. There's nothing that's going to top it. And then Oppenheimer
that literally dropped an atom bomb.
Destroys it. And then one of the few from this year, The Substance. I think The Substance was a tremendous black comedy. I think that it did something great with the body horror. I really loved that movie a lot. And number 6, Drive My Car. A 3-hour punishing look at mortality, which you wouldn't expect me to absolutely adore, but my God, did I love that one.
God
so
damn.
My top 5.
Hell yeah. Well, bottom 5, but in this case,
bottom 5, yeah.
All right. Kristen, going to you. What is your 10 through 6? God damn, I was not expecting that to go so fast. I was rapid fire. Holy shit.
Yeah. Alrighty, since I am a fan of Steven Spielberg's, I love the remake of West Side Story. So that's coming in at number 10 for me. I just love the performances, everything that film is, and that has a personal relationship to me because I went to school where they were filming the film. So I just thought it was really cool. It just encapsulated a time also in COVID. So seeing that. So I love that film. Number 9, I couldn't help but put a Marvel film, but I have to put Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's just a beautiful film. Even if you don't count it part of the MCU, just James Gunn's direction is just spectacular, and everybody in that cast is on their A game to tell a final, complete, beautiful chapter. Number 8, a film I love going to the movies for. That's what also helps contribute to my list, and that is Top Gun Maverick. I am a huge Top Gun fan. It's one of my favorite films from the 80s. So seeing Top Gun Maverick in a big IMAX theater really defined why I love filmmaking and why I love going to see an IMAX film. And just Tom Cruise in general is a Hollywood star, and he just owned that film. You could say he owns it in Mission Impossible, but I think his A game is obviously in Top Gun. Number 7 is Poor Things, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. One of my favorite book to screen adaptations. I love the book, seeing how wacky and zany that is, and just bring the wonders to what Yorgos does to tell his stories in filmmaking. I thought it was stellar, and Emma Stone is just obviously a bona fide star, regardless whatever film she's in, and she just captures the screen in Poor Things. And then at number 6, also great singing in the theater, great singing in IMAX theater, and that was Dune Part 2 by Denis Villeneuve. Just stellar all around from the way it's just filmed, and it's a great watch. So yeah, some really good big and smaller films. And
Hell yeah, I'm loving what I'm seeing so far. Luke, your 10 through 6.
So my number 10, the one that snuck in, is Everything Everywhere All at Once. I've only watched it once, but it was delightfully bizarre and equally as creative. And in my video, I drew a line. It has the Barney Stinson hot crazy line. It has to be as bizarre as it is creative. I should probably rewatch it. Maybe I'll love it even more. Very deserving Best Picture winner. At number 9, I have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, no longer Part 1.
Yep, no longer Part 1. It is just Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning.
I've rewatched it many times since. The whole train climax is one of my favorite climaxes in that entire franchise. You guys know how much I love that franchise. The 8th one is one of my main reasons to keep on living. At number 8, I have Godzilla -1, which we only had one screening here in Latvia. So I was like, I've heard something about it. Might as well go see it. And then I was completely blown away because it's such a contrast to the American version that we're getting right now. And it's this war story, and Godzilla happens to be there. So it's just perfect. At number 7, my relationship with movies is interesting. The first time I saw it, I was quite disappointed. And when I rewatched it, Tenet became one of my favorite movies, and I've rewatched it many times since. You just have to rewatch it a few times, and you finally get it, and you realize that the time travel method is one of the most creative things just ever conceived. If you think about it too hard, I lose it, but then I just don't try to understand it, feel it, as they say in the movie.
Exactly.
And at number 6, still sequel-less, we have The Batman. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But this was just such a mega hit. Like from that first trailer, you thought, oh my God. Because this is what DC can be. Like DC's highs are higher than Marvel highs because they can be creative like that. And the Batman is just this completely noir graphic novel type thing. So I'm just waiting for the second one at this point.
Yeah, which who knows if we
Keep
will
waiting.
again. We're going to be waiting a while for that one. And guys, we have a surprise guest here. I was not sure if he was going to be able to make it on, but we are joined by Dustin, the Duster Mason. Dustin, happy that you were able to make it on, man. Oh, man, I was worried there. So we literally just started our lists right now. So
along.
Awesome. All right, so do you have any honorable mentions before we get through your 10 through 6?
Yeah, I have a lot of them, to be honest with you. I was sort of like surprised you guys only had like a few, but like I'll run down them really quickly. I have like 16 of them. His Three Daughters is very good. It's directed by Azazel Jacobs. It's on Netflix. Watch it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. The Apprentice, very good. Could have been better. Could have had the theme song from The Apprentice in it, but
It could have.
whatever.
Missed opportunity.
Crap. M. Night Shyamalan. Fucking liked it a lot. Really, like that was one of the better movie going experiences this year for me. Really good, really immersive. Made December from last year. Really dug that a lot. The Iron Claw, Blackberry, it's fucking great. Theater Camp, hysterical. Ambulance, Michael Bay, awesome.
Yes, sir.
The Gentleman. The Gentleman by Guy Ritchie is probably the strongest 8.5 out of 10 movie for me this decade, and I think that deserves a huge shout out. And Hugh Grant that's his best performance. I don't care. Trial of the Chicago 7, The Batman, Anatomy of a Fall. There's my international pick. Promising Young Woman, A Real Pain, On the Count of Three, which is a very slept on movie. Directed by Gerard Carmichael, featuring one of my favorite performances of the decade by Christopher Abbott, and The Brutalist, directed by Brady Corbet.
Yes, sir.
Very, very, very hard cut, but that's my number 11.
All right, let's get to it. What's your 10 through 6? Run it down.
10 is The Holdovers, because I think that was like the most beautifully human film of last year, and I think Giamatti deserved the Oscar, and I think I think it says a lot about Alexander Payne that this is probably like his fourth best movie, and it's that good. You know what I mean? Like, because I adore like Nebraska and The Descendants and Sideways, and a lot of directors would just give up at that point. But like, he's amazing. 9 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant and Mayhem.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Represent.
Go to hell. That movie was fucking hysterical and has some of the best animation I've seen all decade, if not the best. One of the best ensembles of last year, one of the best scripts of last year, one of the best soundtracks, one of the best movies of the decade. Number 8, Jason Reitman's Saturday Night. Of course, this was going to be one of the most worrisome movies from this year because I have a deep love for SNL, but Jason Reitman was probably the best choice for this because he just gets me. He's always been a filmmaker that just has a lot of like the same interests as I do, and like the same like going through all of his movies, like Up in the Air, Young Adult, Men, Women, and Children. Like I connect to all of the different types of stories. Thank You for Smoking, obviously, if you can tell by my voice. My number 7 is Vengeance, which I think more than most films on this list has a chance of moving up. More times I rewatch this is BJ Novak's movie that was very overlooked, and I think it's one of the funniest and one of the most clever films from this decade. And I think it has one of the best ensembles, and it has one of the best like arcs for a main character that I've seen. And Ashton Kutcher is terrific in it. My number 6 is another one where I'm like my 7 through 5, I would say, all from 2022 was kind of like a tie, because my number 6 is The Menu, and that's another one where I feel like the dark comedy in that is just so on point, and the satire, what they're going for, to where by the third act it kind of becomes like a surreal kind of Adult Swim-esque kind of movie. Like it just kind of blew my mind, and I think Ray Fiennes deserved all the buzz Colin Farrell did last year. I mean that year, in terms of like Searchlight films, and I don't know, that movie does like it was written by some guys from Succession, and it was directed by Mark Mylod. It's so good. It was such a movie up my alley. I love cooking shows, and just that whole world being satirized was just brilliant to me. So that's my 10 through 6.
Fuck yeah, I am loving these lists so far. So, mine, oh man, this is going to be a tough act to follow. These are some good fucking movies right here. All right, like I said, so, as I've often said, what's it called? Many times, I always have to consider a lot of things. I have to consider quality. I have to consider overall appeal. I have to consider a lot of things. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what hits me the hardest in the heart. And so naturally, my number 10 is a James Gunn movie from this decade, but not Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It's The Suicide Squad. My favorite movie of 2021. One of my absolute just favorite viewing experiences of the decade. After that absolute shit heap that was the 2016 one, it naturally makes sense that after Gunn was fired from Marvel the first time, DC immediately scooped him up, and they kind of asked him, like, well, what do you want to do? You know? And his response was, I kind of want to do Suicide Squad. And I think it's pretty telling of a movie when the worst thing you can say is, oh, I don't know how it connects to the first one. Is it a sequel? Is it a reboot? Does it really matter? Who cares? Because I had so much fucking fun. This is everything that I wanted the first movie to be and more. I believe this is the only 5 stars that I gave to a movie in the year of 2021, and I think it was very, very well deserved. Just right down to, again, so clean with the editing, the soundtrack is on point, the action never misses, not a bad character or performance in the entire movie. This movie, the way that it kind of pays homage to Inglourious Basterds, which I'm like, just the fact I'm like, wow, it's been enough time since Inglourious Basterds that we can have homages to that. So many different surprises, actually made good use of both the ensemble and the premise of the squad, in the sense of you're not supposed to know which one of these guys is going to die because any one of them could drop at any minute, and that's exactly what we got here. It kind of finally showed us that John Cena is actually a bankable movie star, and of course, I mean, it gives us King Shark voiced by Sylvester Stallone, and it ends with them fighting Starro the Conqueror. I don't ask for much when it comes to my comic book movies now, but this gave me everything that I wanted and more. My number 9. Okay, This is a tough one because literally I kind of just threw the movies on the list and I'm kind of literally just organizing them right now as we see it. RRR. Yeah, this is a movie that I was not expected to even watch. I'm like, a 3-hour long Indian movie, and just the visuals I thought from the trailer looked like absolute crap. I'm like, this, and then the movie kept picking up steam and momentum, and people kept watching it and talking about it, and then it went on Netflix, and then a very good friend of mine whose opinion I very, very much trust recommended it to me, and I'm like, all right, I watch it, and I started watching it, and I could not stop. So this is the thing about Bollywood, about Indian movies. They don't like just pick one genre. They put every genre into every one of their movies. Like, this movie has action. This movie has romance. This movie has bromance. This movie has, political inclinations. This has one of the greatest song and dance numbers I've ever seen in anything ever. And it is just, it's once again another indication of how foreign cinema really came to play this year, but also it is just so unlike anything that I've ever seen before in my life. There's an action sequence where these two guys literally have to run at each other on a burning bridge, somehow collide with each other, use 2 grappling hooks to swing around the edge, save this kid that's trapped underneath, and somehow magically land on the, like, I can't describe it. Like, the more that
tigers are in it, right?
oh yeah, tigers, and then even better, there's another one where they have to drive a truck straight through a guard. Yeah, exactly. Turn it sideways, the dude leaps out with 2 torches and a bunch of other animals in slow motion. Again, like, I'm still finding it hard to believe these words as they are coming out of my mouth, but yet somehow it just works, and it's one of my favorite instances.
And the musical aspect of that movie, like, is great and not distracting.
Yes, okay. It is.
Okay.
Like, they actually work, which I almost never say about musicals, so I had to put that one in there. My number 8 is Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. This was one of this is another instance too that I found for the decade, which is that I see a movie, I'm like, oh, this is my favorite movie of the year, and then nothing else, like, derails it. Like, it was the case with Oppenheimer, it was the case with Dune 2, it was the case with The Suicide Squad, and it was the case with this one. I saw this in March of 2022. I'd been hearing about this movie for a while. I'm like, this is a really long title. What the hell is this about? And then it ended up being the best multiverse movie possibly ever made. It was a movie that kind of did everything that the Marvel movies up until that point had not been doing, which is that it was a movie ultimately about family lineage and legacy and trying to make the best of a bad situation, while also you just have absolute insanity, multiverse level stakes, and really crazy immature jokes, and also random references to Ratatouille. Also, one of the best comeback performances by Ke Huy Quan as an adult ever. So, and rightfully won him the Oscar. So, yeah, Everything Everywhere. I saw this movie, and I'm like, I saw a lot of other great movies that year. I was waiting for it to get dethroned. It never was. My number 7 is, The Iron Claw. We have had biopics before. This is the first, I don't know why I'm putting that up yet. I'm waiting for that for a little bit later. This is the best family tragedy that I've seen. And it's a unique sort of biopic in the sense that, unlike most biopics, which are kind of telling the story of the rise of one person, this is interesting because it's kind of telling this real-based tragedy, obviously the story of the Von Erich family and the awful, awful tragedy that kind of befell them. But it's a movie about addiction and kind of how that affects not only one person, but every person involved, but not like the traditional addiction, like drug addiction. It's this addiction to, obviously, this sport, but ultimately how that, in combination with this so-called purported family curse, kind of ends up ripping apart this family that is so tightly linked and so loving of each other. And ultimately where the real tragedy is that the main character, Kevin Von Erich, portrayed by Zac Efron in his best film performance ever to this date, ultimately has to separate himself from that family unit in order to kind of preserve himself at the cost of his own family as he watches each of his brothers unfortunately succumb to kind of this family curse. And it was just so unlike anything that I'd seen before. It was I was crying by the end. That's how hard this one hit me. And my number 6 is not only another superhero instance, but possibly, I want to say, the best sequel that we've gotten so far this decade. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Damn it, I knew I was gonna fucking do it. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Even though this is a part 1, this is my contribution to the Phil Lord and Chris Miller kind of canon that we've gotten so far this year. It was everything that I wanted from the first one and more, and stepped it up as far as animation goes. It sets the bar. It's between this and Arcane as far as setting the bar as far as what animated storytelling is capable of in this new decade. It kind of pulled off the 1-2 punch that it was both a Miles Morales and a Gwen Stacy story, because the movie starts and ends with Gwen, but you still kind of have Miles' struggle that is dictating this. Another great multiverse instance, just in terms of if you're a Spider-Man fan, this gives you almost everything to love with both the, animation and live action. This is pulling influences from literally every Spider-Man story, going all the way back to the beginning and ending on the cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers, honestly, for setting us up for a third movie that we still have not gotten. Who knows if and when we're getting. I don't know which movie we've been waiting longer for, the Batman Part 2 or Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, but yeah, that's one had to make the list. So, running down the lists so far, just to recap, people, if you were just joining us now, Sean's 10 through 6. Number 10, Judas and the Black Messiah. Number 9, Another Round. Number 8, Past Lives. Number 7, The Substance. And number 6, Drive My Car. Kristen's 10 through 6. Number 10, West Side Story. Number 9, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3. Number 8, Top Gun Maverick. Number 7, Poor Things. And number 6, Dune Part 2. Luke's 10 through 6. Number 10, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Number 9, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, no longer Part 1. Number 8, Godzilla -1. Number 7, Tenet. And number 6, The Batman. Dustin's 10 through 6. Number 10, The Holdovers. Number 9, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. Number 8, Saturday Night. Number 7, Vengeance. And number 6, The Menu. And my 10 through 6, number 10, The Suicide Squad. Number 9, RRR. Number 8, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Number 7, The Iron Claw. And number 6, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. All right, Sean, moving over to your 5 through 2. What is your number 5?
So 5 through 2, here we go. My number 5 is The Zone of Interest.
All right.
Which is a movie that can make my stomach feel absolutely sick without showing any of the disturbing things and just having them be implications. And just having like the one of the heads of the Nazis literally just like going through his house and shutting off all the lights and stuff. Something that I do as the patriarch of the family. Terrifying to be compared in that way. And I just was absolutely horrified beyond belief with that movie. So really was impactful. My number 4 is kind of literally the film of the decade, where it started out in festivals in 2022, barely got distribution, barely still has distribution, but it was mentioned here in honorable mention, which makes me so happy. That's Hundreds of Beavers.
Hell yeah!
This movie is hysterical, like nothing I've ever seen before. Goofy, loopy, should not succeed at all, and absolutely does. And I'm following this. I don't follow many movies on Instagram. I'm following this movie on Instagram because it's becoming a cult hit. This is something that I don't know if it's going to be on any other lists or anything, but people are going dressed as beavers. People are they had so much fun with the marketing of this, spoofing other movie posters with beavers. I think this is on Prime right now. I strongly recommend seeing it. It's so fun. No dialogue. It's a live action Looney Tunes. It really is one of the funner movies that I've seen.
Oh my God. The scene where the beavers are kicking him in the balls over and over again. It gets me every time. Every time.
So number 3 is going to be Dune Part 2, and I'm obviously cheating, and I'm including Dune Part 1 as that, but I will legally put it in as Dune Part 2 for the sake of the honor. They're both exceptional. They're both monumental films in sci-fi. I was just blown away by how well this was able to be crafted. There's a part of me that only wishes it would just stop here. I don't know anything about the other texts, and I just think at this point, this is kind of a perfect 1-2 punch. And finally, number 2 is Anatomy of a Fall.
Right.
This movie just blew me away. It's just such an interesting look at a legal system that I, as not even being a lawyer, I thought I knew everything about movie legal systems, and then this one blew me out of the water, and it's right there. It's just so good, and it's just a shame. I kind of understand why they didn't make it their international pick. It would have won, but then Zone of Interest would have lost, and so I'm sort of torn on that one. But I absolutely love that movie so much, and I saved the number 1. That's fun. Okay.
All right. Yep. Save the number 1. Like I said, when we go through it. All right, Kristen, down to you. Your 5 through 2. What have you got?
Can I just say I love everybody's list so far? Everything's so different, and now I'm hearing the Menu. I didn't even get to mention that as an honorable mention. And here we go. I'm going to say the wrong Spider-Man. Across the Spider-Verse. It's the right one.
You see?
There's so many good films, I must say, that I didn't even get to mention as honorable mention. So I must say, everyone here, I'm so happy. I'm so happy to hear everybody's list. I love doing this. So coming in at number 5 for my list, I have The Substance.
Hell yeah.
It's got horror and it's fun. It's a dark comedy. And Demi Moore comes out better than ever in her career. I just love her in this film. And Margaret Qualley is just defining herself as a Hollywood star. I mean, she's been in so much, but this is just a spectacular performance. I love everything in that film. It's a great, great watch. And coming in at number 4, another film I wanted to mention as an honorable mention, but Red Rocket, I got to mention Sean Baker's Enora. I love Sean Baker as a filmmaker. He has grown on me tremendously. And seeing Enora was just a changing experience for me. And I love Mikey Madison in that film. The direction is strong. The cinematography is stellar. I love the adventure that you go on with the main character. And I just adored every single minute of it. It's just a fun ride.
I mean, listen, that opening montage where they're doing the slow tracking shot past all the strippers as they're twerking. I mean, that'll change you for sure.
I mean, I saw this with my mom and my aunt, and then one of my friends at a film festival.
Oh no!
I was not expecting to see what I did.
The movie's literally about sex workers. What did you expect?
They were like, okay, Night Bitch is sold out, so we'll go see it.
Wow, what options? Oh man.
So it's funny because my poor mom, my aunt, and my aunt, my good shout out to Aunt Dawn. Shout out to Aunt Dawn if you're watching. She's a stellar. She's like, I don't care, whatever. And my mom's sitting there like a good woman. Mom, she's like, oh my god. And I'm like, Mom,
She's like, how are they doing that?
When you watch cinema, you've seen it all.
This is the greatest anecdote yet so far. I'm already kicking off the new year right. What's your number 3?
Number 3 is another female director who I wanted to bring up on this list, and that is Emerald Fennell, who directed Promising Young Woman. Say what you want about Saltburn, but Promising Young Woman defined the Me Too movement, and I think it's beautiful. It's got color. It's got Y2K a little bit of vibes with the musical score, and Carey Mulligan is stellar. It's got Bo Burnham, who doesn't do a lot of acting, and he's great in it, has great chemistry with Carey Mulligan in it. It's so good, and I love what it has to say. And Emerald Fennell is like defining herself as a filmmaker. She's only done like 2 films, and now she's going to direct Wuthering Heights. I'm just excited to see whatever she does. But, starting her career directing Promising Young Woman just defined something in me, and just love to see what she has done with it. And the twist and everything about that film is so entertaining. And then number 2, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Not saying anything different what a lot of you all have said. And I'll just say this, Martin Scorsese cinema. So that's what it is. It's great. It's fun.
Indeed. Oh man, that anecdote about Enora, I'm gonna remember that for the rest of the year. That's gonna be the thing that kicks off the year. That's great. All right, Luke, going over to you. What's your 5 through 2?
All right, my number 5, my one non-blockbuster for the list is Past Lives. I watched it. It was one of my January catch-up movies for that year. Echo somewhere. I don't know. I watched it on evening. I watched it and I rewatched it the next day because it just hit me that hard, and it's just a really beautiful and touching story. Number 4, I have the first Dune. Going in, I knew nothing about Dune, and going out, I wanted to know everything about Dune. I've now read the first 3. Don't bother with the 3rd book; it's not very good. But then I rewatched it for the first time now last year, and I realized, oh my god, maybe I'd watched a lot of bad movies recently, but it just felt so real, so raw and authentic, and just a mega blockbuster. And at number 3, I have one Top Gun Maverick, which I've championed this movie ever since it came out. I wasn't really like a big fan of the first Top Gun. I was kind of just another Tom Cruise movie, but then Top Gun Maverick, it's like, if you capture vehicles going really fast in any kind of format, that's gonna get me into the seat. And I've rewatched it like, I don't know, too many times since then. And at number 2, I have Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, which, if you can make a 3-hour, pretty much dialogue only courtroom drama about World War II era history. Like only Christopher Nolan could make that as riveting and entertaining as he does. And I've rewatched that many times since as well. Reading the Oppenheimer biography was well worth it because I could catch on to things. And I'll shout out to Arcane because that's probably the best thing this decade has ever made.
Hell yeah.
But they won't
Hell
appear on the
yeah.
list, and then we'll get to number one later.
Yes, we will get to that. All right, Dustin, going over to you. What is your 5 through 2?
Number 5 is Babylon, Damien Chazelle. Now, this is just why I love the movies. Like, it's just, you can call it overlong, you could call it bloated, you could call it excessive, but that was sort of the point, I feel like. And I just love the style. I love the energy. It's one of the quickest 3-hour movies you'll see, and it has a great ensemble. Everyone is outstanding in it. Jovan Adepo, I feel like, never gets talked about. And I think, like, everything I've seen him in, including his 3 daughters, like, he's just terrific. Brad Pitt's outstanding. Margot Robbie's incredible. Diego Calva, it would be nice to see him in something else again. Just loved it. It has one of the coolest and craziest endings, but it's beautiful all at once. 4. My number 4 is The King of Staten Island.
All right. I was wondering when this was going to show up.
Yeah, I think this is one of the funniest films from the decade easily. I mean, we haven't had a lot of good straight up comedies at all, but this is one of the good ones because it's kind of like Knocked Up and Trainwreck, where it's like they're not full out like gag machines, but when the movie wants to be a gag machine, it can be, and especially when it comes to that climactic scene with Action Bronson being rushed to the emergency room by Pete Davidson with a mysterious wound. It's probably still the funniest scene of the decade.
What is it? His vape explodes in his pocket or something like that?
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, he's so vague. He keeps changing it every second.
Yeah.
He's like, my friend. It was my friend. It's just what friends do. We're buddies still. Like. And then Pete Davidson's like, "Oh no, man, I can't do this. I'm high." And like Action Bronson's like, "I'm high too." And they're in the emergency room, and he's like, "Dude, if I don't make this, I want you to tell my sister I know she's my mother." That's like one of the that shit deserves to be like in the top 5. And Bill Burr's incredible in it too, and Marissa Tomei is ageless, and
literally
love it. Love the cast. Great cast. Number 3. The Suicide Squad. I'm very surprised this is your number 10 only, because this is like the epitome of like, this is what I want in blockbuster filmmaking, and it's a shame. One of you said before when talking about this that it was like profitable. Dude, if there was anything this movie wasn't, it was profitable. It was so fucked by the Warner Brothers, HBO Max same day release. And that's what all the Snyder heads love to point at whenever they call this movie a failure, even though it's better in every way than the David Ayer movie, like in every single way.
Yes.
Like the soundtrack's better, the cast's better, the pacing's better, the story's better, the villain's better. Everything about this movie is terrific. And it might be my favorite James Gunn movie. I think it's his best work, and call it my R-rated bias if you want, but like R-rated movies are usually better. Sorry, maybe Superman's going to be great, but this is going to be very hard to top for me in terms of superhero cinema. My number 2, Sean Baker's Anora.
All right.
Very, very good. Loved it. This is the first Sean Baker movie I've loved. He's been kind of a polarizing filmmaker for the most part. The only film of his I really like other than Anora is Red Rocket. I really like Red Rocket, mostly because of Simon Rex and the way the movie is shot. And I do find it funny. But the rest of his movies kind of borderline on like exploitation and like voyeurism. And it's just like, he's not really telling stories as much as he is just telling like sad stack, like little anecdotes more than like actual stories, because the Florida Project in particular just meandered so much and could have been at least it could have been like an hour and a half, and it could have followed the mother specifically, which was a terrific performance. But Honora takes all of the things I was worried about with his filmography, like just his fascination with sex work, his fascination with like just odd relationships, like troublesome couples that shouldn't be together, whether it's because of age or circumstance. And he's just, this is his funniest movie easily from top to bottom, even though the last 10 minutes are very sobering, intentionally so. And the cast, I feel like the non-actors blend with the real actors in the best way that we've seen in any of his films. And Mikey Madison's incredible, and Karen Karagulian as Toros is great. Yura Borisov's outstanding. The kid is a little shit stain, but he's hilarious. So I hadn't had more fun and satisfying time at the movies this year, and it's one that's going to benefit from multiple rewatches, and I feel like it's going to be Sean Baker's defining film.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could not agree with that more. All right, going on to my 5 through 2. My number 5, I'm surprised that this didn't make anyone's list so far, but for me, actually, wait, I'm wrong. I think this made someone's list. My short-term memory is awful, so I apologize already. Godzilla -1 is my number 5. This was one of the true surprises of the decade for me so far. Again, given that, what the American iteration of Godzilla has kind of become, and kind of how his meaning, his representation in society has changed so drastically since his introduction to the mainstream overall. But I will say that for my money, again, I went into this about a year ago, again, not expecting much. I'm like, the effects kind of look cheap. I was not at all expecting for this to hit as hard as I was, where, again, it's more of a World War II movie, I would argue, than a Godzilla movie. You have this incredible backstory established around this main character and his feeling and his role in Japanese society before you even introduce Godzilla. And then Godzilla goes away, and you follow this guy as he makes his way back to Japanese, society, kind of in that post-World War II recovering, and you have like a solid 20 minutes before Godzilla shows up again as kind of the representation of kind of the coming together of the human spirit, and how people, I think this movie hit extra hard in the wake of COVID, in the idea of kind of when we are left behind by our so-called leaders, and we kind of have to band together in order to repel these threats that nobody else is going to come and help us defeat. And that, like I said, that's just the human aspects. In terms of the monster aspects and kind of the effects, kind of the blending of practical with CG, it's one of the most seamless jobs that I've seen in recent memory, as well as the fact that it's one of the instances that makes Godzilla scary again, which I really haven't seen in a long time. Like the effects, like when you see his atom breath go off in the American movies, they're basically cartoons at this point. But here, I was like, holy shit! Like when that breath went off, that felt like an atom bomb. Ironically, in the same year that we saw Christopher Nolan detonate what felt like a literal atom bomb in Oppenheimer so far. But I was just like, God damn! Like this is just something completely unlike anything that I have seen before. And the ending was just awesome. So yeah, I had to give this one a shout out for sure. Godzilla -1. My number 4, everybody here has gone with Honora, and I absolutely understand why. For me, I still go with Red Rocket. I love that one for the simple fact that, so everything that Sean Baker does with Honora is, I would say, his most fully realized vision in terms of kind of the encapsulation of everything that he's gone for. The reason why I went with Red Rocket is because he's pretty much doing almost everything that he does with Honora. The difference is that Annie Honora is a pretty sympathetic, relatable character, as this young woman who gets swept up into like this whirlwind romance before it's ultimately ripped apart from her in this scathing kind of this scathing indictment of class. Red Rocket does something similar, but the difference is that there is absolutely nothing to like about this protagonist. This is one of the most deplorable, awful human beings walking the planet. This is a man who literally had to run away from the porn industry Think about that for a second. Run away from the porn industry. How awful do you have to be to get chased out of the porn industry? Not the sex work industry, the porn industry. And his immediate thing when he gets back into his hometown is to immediately start selling drugs, hook up with and then immediately cheat on his ex-wife before hooking with a 17-year-old girl who is not even legal yet, causes a massive car pileup, and literally all of this is through the power of Simon Rex's performance. Like, the fact that Simon Rex is as good as he is in this movie and manages to keep you anchored in a movie that otherwise would pretty much easily fall apart. I had to give the shout out to that one. Again, I love Denora. It will be in my top 10 of the year. But yeah, Red Rocket, there's just something about when a movie is able to keep you that invested in a character that you know is that deplorable. Kind of that juxtaposition there is really, really interesting. My number 3, it is the movie event of this year. Some would argue it is the movie event of the franchise of the decade. It's Dune 2. It has to be Dune 2. Like I said, everything that I was waiting for after the first one, I finished the book just in time for this one. Arguably, again, I still despise the fact that they split these movies into 2 parts. Would I have preferred the 5-hour-long version, all just released as one movie? Yes. Does that make me a psychopath? Yes. Does that make any financial sense? No, I don't care. But yeah, this is everything that we knew we were going to get from more. It finally accurately captures Frank Herbert's vision as far as kind of deconstructing the Messianic myth and how, getting addicted to these Messiah figures is not a good idea. And also just Denis Villeneuve delivering on these absolutely spectacular visual kind of modicum. It is the thing that I look for when it comes to these levels of blockbusters is the true blend of art and commerce, where this is the biggest feeling movie ever while also having some pretty deep themes as well, which I always enjoy. The cast delivers. The new additions: Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh, Austin Butler as Fade Routha. We also get some greater expansions on some of the characters that were only briefly introduced in the first one. Javier Bardem, namely being Stilgar, Zendaya as Chani. Denis obviously makes some changes to the Chani character as well in order to try and make it slightly even more relevant. Like I said, the idea of prophecies and myth making and who we put our faith in. All of this and more. It's why Dune has been as relevant as it has been to this day, and it's why Dune 2 has to be on the list. My number 2, oh man, Christopher Nolan, man. The thing about this decade is this decade has been about kind of directors, I feel like, really having their most, it may not be their best work, but it's their most fully realized work. So Oppenheimer has to be number 2. This was the movie event of last year. They literally were counting down from the moment they announced the movie in 2021. They knew this was going to be it. They knew they were winning their best picture. They knew that they were finally getting Nolan as best director, and it all came fully due. This is what establishes Nolan as the Spielberg of our time, He'd already had such incredible hits like, going all the way back to Memento, and then obviously defining the 2000s, early 2010s with The Dark Knight and Inception, which I just recently rewatched. The ending made me bawl my eyes out. Then he was getting a little bit more experimental with movies like Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, but here he was like, all right. He's like, now this is gonna be this is my American epic. This is my chance to tell. He called J. Robert Oppenheimer the most important figure in the history of America, and after seeing his examination of him, I understand why. As far as, again, being a man that is so solely focused on what he can contribute to the world scientifically and his legacy, that he doesn't realize that the actual powers that be, the actual powerful men, are taking that away from him. And by the time he realizes that, it's too late, and all he's left with is the guilt of his own conscience of creating the weapon that ultimately was ultimately going to be humanity's ultimate doom. You may think I'm talking about The Wind Rises. I am not. I am talking about Oppenheimer, I promise. And again, it has, for me, the biggest mic drop ending of the year, when he's having that conversation with Einstein, and he's like, you remember when I came to you that one day? And Einstein's like, yes, you thought that you would start a chain reaction that was going to cause humanity to kill itself. And he's like, well, that's just it. I think we did. And just boom, mic drop ending. He's like, yeah, I'm winning my fucking best director prize with this. Number 2, Oppenheimer has to be. You may be wondering what my number 1 is. Like, what could possibly top Oppenheimer? You guys will see. Just to run through that one more time, man, I'm having a blast, guys. This is exactly what I wanted and more. Sean's 5 through 2. Number 5, The Zone of Interest. Number 4, Hundreds of Beavers. Love that you put that on there. Number 3, Dune 2. Number 2, Anatomy of a Fall. I just realized we have Dune 2 in the same spot. Kristen's 5 through 2. Number 5, The Substance. Number 4, Honora. Number 3, Promising Young Woman. And number 2, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Luke's 5 through 2. Number 5, Past Lives. Number 4, Dune. Number 3, Top Gun Maverick. And number 2, Oppenheimer. Dustin's 5 through 2. Number 5, Babylon. Number 4, The King of Staten Island. Number 3, The Suicide Squad. Number 2, Honora. And my 5 through 2. 5, Godzilla -1. 4, Red Rocket. 3, Dune 2. And number 2, Oppenheimer. All right, people, we have reached it. Our number 1, our collective favorite movies of the decade so far, 2020 through 2024. Sean, let's start with you.
I'd
What is
love
your
to be
number 1?
cooler. I would so love to be cooler, but I'm a basic bitch, and I'm putting Oppenheimer at number
Hell
1.
yeah. I knew it was going to
Listen,
happen.
I remember I even felt bad at the end of the year being like, oh, I guess it's Oppenheimer number 1. It's
Yep.
just it's so unimaginative.
that.
It's so unrealized, but it's the perfect pick. And
Yep.
it's like, you get into the historical biopic stuff. It's the reason this wins Best Picture. You can get the old people, you can get the new people. It's an encapsulating story. It's really good. I guess young people, yeah. It's like, I truly, truly loved this movie so much. It was the best of my year last year, and it just wasn't even a competition. I think that the risks that were taken were some that I've seen taken on other movies and absolutely fail. But this one, it was Oppenheimer. Just like everything about it, an epitome of a great movie.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Kristen, you're number 1.
Here comes another basic biatch, and that's Oppenheimer.
Oh,
for
boy.
Me.
Oh, boy.
It
Let's-
defines what we've been seeing in cinema lately and how we go to the theater. I mean, Barbenheimer, I said it earlier. This is powerful filmmaking, and Christopher Nolan is the director of our time. And he shows in every single way. That's why he won Best Director. That's why Cillian Murphy is one of the greatest actors of all time. It's stellar. It's wild, and probably the best World War II film I've ever seen.
One could say Interstellar. Sorry, I'm going to go kill myself now. All right, Luke, you're number 1.
I thought I was going to be basic and say Dune Part 2, but I guess I'm semi-basic. When I was reading it, I'm thinking like he left all this stuff for the second half. Like, how's he going to pull this off? And he did. Through the action, through Hans Zimmer's incredible score. Can you hear the phone ringing? Or no? Okay,
No.
good. We keep going.
Oh, no. Oh, no. We're hearing things?
No.
Is the island coming for you, Luke?
Oh, the island has been with me for a while, Dom. Anyway, where was I? I also appreciate the changes that Denis made. I think they improved the film, namely the Chani character and making Alia not a fully competent 4-year-old. Instead, she's a mind-controlling fetus. We'll see what Anya Taylor-Joy does with that role later on. And yeah, it's just such a perfect big blockbuster, like Dom said. The art and the commerce balances out, and I'm ready for people to hate Dune Messiah. I'll be on the other side of that.
I still have yet to read it, so I still have to determine.
Oh,
whether
there's some
the case.
name drops in there that I'm like, please put that in the movie. It'd be
Okay.
so funny.
Yeah, I've heard Peter Dinklage is being considered for a certain part. Which, if that happens, I hope. Because I mean, how could you not? All right, Dustin, going over to you. What's your number 1?
Before I reveal that, I just want to say probably the best thing I've seen this decade, and I don't count it because it's a documentary, and that's The Last Dance, the documentary about the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan and everything. It's like a 10-parter. If the OJ doc, which was amazing too, got an Oscar win, how the hell can't The Last Dance? That was the best thing that happened.
They literally changed the rules right after the OJ doc because of that. They said that it couldn't be 10-hour episodes.
That's so
bullshit.
Whatever. But that's the best. But number 1, Adam McKay's Don't Look Up. Now, call me crazy for putting a Netflix movie in my number 1. I did see it in theaters, but a week before it actually released on Netflix. But yes, this is the best comedy we've had in terms of like this is the best satire we've had. This is it's not as good as Network, but this is the closest we're going to get to having a network this decade, I would say. And I just love the cutthroat attitude Adam McKay had while making this movie. And it's the first movie that really satirizes us, like society as a whole, super accurately. And that's why I feel why this is probably the most polarizing film of the decade so far. People didn't like the attitude because it felt like it was making fun of them. It is, motherfucker, and you deserve it. All right? This movie's angry, hopeful, and hysterical, and it has one of the most haunting post-credit scenes I've ever seen involving fucking futuristic ostriches eating Meryl Streep. And it has one of the best ensemble casts of the decade with Jonah Hill, Leo, Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep, Rob Morgan's incredible. I love this movie, and I just think every time I rewatch it, it's not it's perfectly imperfect, but it hits all of its beats. Timothée Chalamet is hilarious in this, and I just think it's a super important movie that I feel like will get reevaluated in a few years, maybe 10 years, and will get appreciated and finally stop getting shit on for all the Oscar noms it got, but it deserved them.
Yes.
And more.
Yes, it did. Oh man, wow, really putting the pressure on. Like I said, throughout this list, we've been talking about a lot of big movies. You know, big, epic, grandiose natures, movies that again are commentaries on our status. I want to go like what Dustin said. I want to go with a movie that looks back on us for my number one, but a movie that, rather than looking at the worst of us, can look at the best that we have to offer. A movie about passion. A movie about following your dream, but also maybe realizing that there's a little bit more to life than that. Obviously, I've been incapable of shutting up at the fact that I am a big fan of Pixar, obviously, and what they have to offer, specifically throughout the course of my life growing up. And the thing about that really made 2020 as a year particularly hard was the fact that I kind of had to say goodbye to the Pixar that I knew growing up. But there was something about watching this movie when it dropped on Christmas Day with my niece and watching her reaction to it. Like, so Pete Docter, I would say Inside Out was like his warm-up for this sort of storytelling. And that was like kind of, again, like that movie was so intelligent and witty as far as its examination of the human psyche and how like emotions are portrayed and how like kind of our emotions drive us. But Soul was a movie that has kind of been a little bit lost to time, which I was surprised at. But it's that one movie that every time I bring it up with people are like, oh, yeah, like that movie was fucking great. And I watched this movie probably 4 times and cried every single time when I watched it when it first came out. And it's just pitch perfect storytelling from start to finish. The animation is amazing. The voiceover is amazing. It has the Pixar humor, of course. But there's something about kind of the existential nature of this movie and how it is able to kind of make the idea of life and death and our place in the universe, which I think is something that a lot of people have been considering and looking at and examining even more harshly throughout these last couple of years. And this movie kind of just sums it up and captures that all perfectly. Where you have Jamie Foxx as this middle school jazz teacher who's always wanted to be this incredible jazz musician, and literally the day after he scores the gig of a lifetime, he dies. He just dies. He falls down a sewer hole and goes to the great beyond. And his whole thing is like, well, this can't be it. Like, I worked my whole life for this. Like, and now you're just gonna take it all away from me, you know? And so his goal, his mission, as he teams up with Tina Fey, who portrays a soul that has yet to actually experience the real world in real life, and they kind of go on this journey in order to try and get him back to Earth. And then he finally gets it. He plays the gig. He gets what he wants. And he realizes that, again, the whole beauty of life, the meaning of life, I'm getting really existential and weighty here, but the whole beauty of life and the meaning of life is that it doesn't make a difference unless you can actually take in every single experience that comes your way, not just the ones that you can kind of pick and choose. And that's something that I've really taken to heart, and something that I've really been struggling and trying hard to do just in my own personal life. especially coming out of the year 2024, which, as I've said, is probably the worst year of my life that I've had to experience yet. But the fact of the matter is that I feel like that when people ask me what it is that movies are missing now, as far as why they're not as good as they used to be, this is kind of what I point my finger to as far as this sort of thing. This is what movies are missing. They're missing kind of. I mean, yes, the movies are great. Movies are great escapes, but they're great when they're just a little bit more than that. When they have just a little bit something else to offer. When you're watching them and you can take away from it, be like, oh yeah, it doesn't all have to be miserable. It can be more. Like, my life can amount to more than just the sum of its parts. And I haven't seen really another movie this decade that's captured that. There have been some that have come close, but really nothing else has really come close to capturing just everything that it was so perfectly to a T. Also, I'm putting it out right now. The best Trent Reznor Atticus Raw score since The Social Network. Easily. Like, when they are jumping to earth at the end and that score is going off, like, I can see the tears welling up in your eyes right now, even as I'm talking about it, because I know you forgot about that moment, but it just hits that fucking hard. And that's why, again, I've been waiting for a movie for these last 4 years to top it, but there hasn't been one. It's Soul. And when I think of the 2020s summed up, again, big grandiose movies like Oppenheimer, like Dune 2, again, those are fun, and those are the ones that are going to come close and weighty, but it's going to be Soul for me that I'm going to take with me really through the rest of my life. So, yeah, that's my number one. So
shout out to John Batiste, who also worked on that film.
Yeah.
So
yes, absolutely. Yes, I forgot to mention
helped
him.
define his career in cinema. I mean,
Yep.
look at him now. We got mentioned Saturday
Just
night.
recently Saturday night. Exactly.
That's probably my favorite score of the year, followed by Challengers, the better score.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Than Soul.
Nah, disagree. Nope, disagree. Hard disagree. I'm going to fight you on that one. Don't. Sure, it's not better than Soul. Oh, man. All right. Well, normally this is the part where I do a combined list. But you know what? In this instance, we don't need to. Our lists are our own. And that's the beauty of this thing. Guys, this has been a blast. I could not have asked for a better panel of people to do this with, to kick off 2025. Here's to hopefully a much, much better second half of the decade. I'm glad that we were still able to get some noteworthy, really, really great movies to talk about, because this is ultimately what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about coming together as a community and talking about the things that we love. Cue the community theme song right there. So, with that being said, I want to thank you all for coming on to join me. This has really, really been fun, Sean. So good to have you back on. This better not be the last time that we have you on for the year.
I'll come by again, I promise.
All right, good. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
So, Instagram and Blue Sky at Math Teacher Movies.
All right, so you hopped on the Blue Sky wagon. Love it.
Yeah,
Love
I'm
to
still
see it.
bad at it, but I'm giving it my best.
Listen, it happens. It happens, man. Like I said, we're gonna be seeing more of you throughout this year, and hopefully for the next couple of years. Kristen, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can listen to me on the M&K Productions podcast, co-hosted by my best friend, Mac. Shout out to Mac. I wish he was here to join us today. But I know he's going to have great picks when we discuss our top 10 of 2024. But yeah, you can follow me on social media at Miss Filmingo. And then I have a YouTube channel now where I'm interviewing a whole bunch of filmmakers. I'm starting to post more content. And I'm also on Blue Sky as well. So thank you for having me, Dom. I can't wait to be back in the new year and talk more movies with you.
Of course, you know it. Luke, my Talkin' Lost co-host, we will be resuming this week with wrapping up season 1 before we run through all.
We're wrapping it up already?
Oh, well, wrapping up season 1. Oh, we're not done with the show. Not even close. We
How many seasons you got left? 10?
5. We have 5 seasons left. Yeah. There's only 6 seasons of the show. It ran for a long time, but it didn't run that long. Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They should follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube, because it is January, and January is one of the months that I do upload a video on. So subscribe over there.
Yes, and of course you'll be back on Talkin' Lost when we resume this week. Dustin, as always, my brother from another mother, where could the good people follow you on the interwebs?
YouTube, Mr. G Movie Reviews, Letterboxd, Dustin Mason.
All right. And of course, guys, follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews. Be sure to subscribe to the Talkin' TV podcast. Like I said, our 7th season, we are getting even closer to our 12 seasons in a short film. thing that I say at the end of every episode. I'm gonna have to come up with a new slogan once we actually do hit 12 seasons. It's gonna be insane. And there's always
Well,
people.
we'll need the short film.
We're gonna get the short film. Don't worry, that's coming. That's coming. And you guys know what I'm gonna say. Watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.